We continue now at the top of Daf Chesamid Beis and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 8b. This Daf is sponsored by David Grossman. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you would like to sponsor an Amr or a Daf, see the description box below, and see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous Amr, the Gemara said that Ifra Hormiz, she was the mother of King Shapur. She sent money to Rav Yosef, and she said that the money should be used for a mitzvah rabbah, for a great mitzvah. Rav Yosef wanted to know what is considered to be a great mitzvah, and Abaye said from the fact that when it comes to collecting from orphans, it says that you're not allowed to collect from orphans even for Pidyon Shvuyim. So you see from that Pidyon Shvuyim mitzvah rabbah, it must be that Pidyon Shvuyim is considered to be a great mitzvah, so that is something that you could use the money for. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rava le Rabba bar Mori. Rava said to Rabba bar Mori, Menoha milsa de Amar Rabbanon. Where do we know this thing that the Rabbanon say, the Pidyon Shvuyim mitzvah rabbi, that Pidyon Shvuyim, that redeeming captives is considered to be a great mitzvah? Amar le said back to him, because it's written in the pasuk. This is a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. V'hayaki yomru elecha on an eitzei. If they say, when they say, where are we going to go out? V'yamarta aleim, you should say to them, Ko Amar Hashem. So says Hashem, Asher la maves, the one that's meant to be to death is going to have maves, is going to have death. Vasher lacherev, the one for the sword will be for the sword. Vasher larav, the one for famine will be for famine. Vasher lashevi, and the one who is to be taken captive will be taken captive. The idea over here is that the pasuk is listing punishments, and one is more severe than the next, and so therefore you see that captivity, which is the last one in the list, is the most severe. That's why we understand that Pidyon Shavuyim is a great mitzvah, to redeem the captives is a great mitzvah. V'yamar Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol ha'mu'ucher, but pasuk zeh, anything that is later in this pasuk, as we just said, kasha mechaver, that's considered to be more severe than the thing before it. And the Gemara explains, cherev kasha mimavis, cherev, meaning if you have death by the cherev, by the sword, that is worse than mavis. And the Gemara explains, if you want, I could bring a proof to that from a pasuk, and if you want, we could say it's logic. You could say it's logic as follows: Hai kamenavel v'hai lo kamenavel. When a person dies by cherev, so in such a situation, it's menuvel. The person's body is disgusting. It's not true when a person dies in another fashion, and so that's the logical reason. And if you want, I could say as follows: Krutz from the following pasuk. It says Yokar be'inei Hashem hamov solachas. And the way the Gemara is currently understanding this pasuk, the word yakar over here means precious, meaning to say it's precious in the eyes of Hashem when the pious ones, when they die a natural death, as opposed to dying from famine, as opposed to dying by the sword, etc. Another way to understand the pasuk is yakar beinei Hashem, that it means to say like it's heavy, like it's grievous, it's bad in the eyes of Hashem when the chasidim, when the pious ones die. But again, the way the Gemara is currently understanding it is that it's better, it's a good thing to die a natural death rather than these other kinds of death. And the Gemara continues, Rav kasha mecherev. Now famine, that's worse rather than dying by the sword. Iba yisei masvara, you could say it's logic. Hai ka mitzdar, v'hai lo ka mitzdar. The person who dies by famine, he's in mitzdar, he's in pain. That's not true when a person dies by the sword. Iba yisei makra, if you want, I could say a proof from the pasuk. This is a pasuk in Eicha. It says in the pasuk, Tovim hayu chale cherev, mechale rav. It says that it's better, the chale cherev, those who die, the corpses, those who die by the sword, is better than those who die by famine. And finally, the Gemara says, Shavi kasha mikulam, those who are taken captive, that's worse than all of these. The kulu isnu be, because everything that's listed above, that all applies. Anything can be done with somebody that is taken captive, and therefore, that is the most severe. As Rashi explains, Shavi kulu isnu be, when it comes to somebody who's taken captive, all of these punishments essentially happen to that person. Shubiyadu akum lasus bo kol chefsu, because the non-Jew, the person who's taking him captive, can do anything he wants to the person. Im lamoves, im lacherev, im larav, either he can just have him die, or he can kill him by the sword or famine, and that's why that is considered to be more severe. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Kupa shel tzedakah, the charity box, nigvis b'shnayim, the money is collected with two people, umischalekes b'shlosha, and it's distributed with three people. Nigvis b'shnayim, it's collected with two people, she'ein osim sororos al atzibor, pachos mishnayim, because you don't have people exert authority over the community if it's less than two people. You need at least two people. Umischalekes b'shlosha, and it's distributed with three people. Kedinei mamanis, it's like dinei mamanis, it's like a court case involving monetary matters, and it requires requires 3 people. Tamchui, when it comes to the charity platter, which is essentially the food that is distributed, now that's distributed every day, as we'll see in a moment. So that's nigvis b'shloshu mischalekes b'shloshu. That's collected with 3 people and distributed with 3 people. Shegavuya v'chaluka shavim, because the collection and the distribution, it all takes place at the same time. Tamchui b'chol yom, the charity platter is distributed, that food is distributed every day, and kupa me'erev Shabbos l'erev Shabbos. However, the charity box, that's just distributed every erev Shabbos, every Friday, and so therefore, since the charity platter is distributed basically at the same time that it's collected, so you just have 3 people doing both the collection and the distribution. And the Gemara continues, Tamchui la'aniyei olam, when it comes to the charity platter, that food is given to all the poor of the world. Whoever arrives in the city and asks for food, who is poor, is going to receive that. Kupa, but when it comes to the charity box, la'aniyei ha'ir, that money is distributed specifically to the poor people of the city. V'rashoim b'nei ha'ir la'asos kupa tamchui v'tamchui kupa. However, the people of the city can switch things around. If they want to make the kupa, the charity box, to be like the charity platter, or vice versa, they can reverse things and distribute as they see fit. V'lishanosa l'chol masha yirtzu, they can change it for whatever they see fit. V'rashoin b'nei ha'ir, and furthermore, the people of the city have permission, lahasnos, they can set stipulations, conditions, al hamidos, on the measurements, how measurements work in that locale, v'al hasha'arim, and on prices, they can set prices, v'al schar po'alim, they can also set wages, ula'asiyah al kitzasan, and they can also impose fines if anybody violates the standards that they put forth. And Rashi explains, Mimneshu kedine mamanis, when you're distributing the money, that's like dine mamanis, that's like a court case involving money, la'ayin velosis l'chol echad, kefi tefalim hataluyin bo. In other words, you have to look at the circumstances of each person that you're distributing to see how much he really needs. Shegavuya v'chaluka shava. Now, when it comes to the charity platter, the collection and the distribution are the same. B'chol yom midei yom b'yom, it all happens every single day. Kenektani l'kameh, as it says later on. Lefikach, therefore, ein gevuya b'shnayim, you're not going to collect with 2 people, because then you're just going to have to find the 3rd person anyway when you're distributing and it's taking place at the same time, so you do the collection with 3 people as well. Lasos kupa tamchoy, to make the kupa, means to say to make the charity box into a charity platter. You're allowed to change things around. What that means is lachalik la'aniyei olam im yirbu alein. Let's say you have a lot of aniyei olam and you need to change, you need to distribute it instead to all the poor people of the world. You're allowed to do that if that is the need. And Rashi continues, lahasnos alamidos, they can also make stipulations in terms of measurements, lahagdil sa'aso'ir, or lahaktin, to say that the sa'ah, which is a measurement of the city, should be larger or smaller, v'al hashiorim, and on the prices, sharchitin v'hayayin, meaning the price of wheat, the price of wine, shelo yimcharena shana zu yoser mikach v'kach damim, they can say it can't be sold this year at more than the following price. And finally, Rashi says, la'asiyah al kitzasam liknos ha'sa'over al kitzas divreyim la'asiyah midastin Torah, meaning to say, again, they're allowed to impose a fine on somebody who transgresses the stipulations that they set forth. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, Ein osin nesaroros al hatzibor pachos mishnayim, you can't have authority over the community less than 2 people. Minahani mili, from where do we know this? Amar of Nachman says, Amar Kra, it's because the pasuk says, Veheim yikhu es hazav, and they will take the gold. It says in plural they, so you see a minimum of 2 people when handling this authority. And the Gemara says, Sororos hudalo avdi, you can't have someone have authority, you have to have at least 2 people. Hahemune mehemen, however, we do trust one person, let's say to be the treasurer over the money. It's not an issue of trusting the individual, it's an issue of sororos, it's an issue of authority. And the Gemara says to that, Messiah leila Reb Chanina, that supports what Reb Chanina said. The Yom Reb Chanina, because Reb Chanina said, Maisa umina Rebbe, Shnei Achen ala Kupa, there was an incident where Rebbe appointed 2 brothers over the charity box. Now, 2 brothers, they're really not allowed to testify against one another, they're relatives, so in terms of that, they're considered to be like one person, in terms of believing, in terms of trusting them, and so therefore you see that you're allowed to do that. You can appoint 2 brothers, because you really trust even one individual, you just need to have 2 people because of the issue of sororos, of authority. That's why it's okay to appoint 2 brothers. And the Gemara continues, my sorusa, well, what is the authority over here? Just because you're collecting tzedakah, why does that imply some kind of authority? And the Gemara says to that, the Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua, because Rav Nachman said that Rabba bar Avua said, Lefi shemimashkin in al tzedakah ve'afilu b'erev Shabbos. You're allowed to take collateral when it comes to collecting charity. Essentially, you're allowed to force the collection of charity, and you're allowed to do that even on erev Shabbos. The Gemara says, Ini, is that really true? Are the gaboy tzedakah really allowed to force? V'aksib, but it's written, Ufakadati al kol lochatzav. It says that I'm going to visit punishment upon all the oppressors Jews, and it means to say, V'yomer Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marasa mishmei de Rav. Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marasa said in the name of Rav, who are these lochatzov? Who are these oppressors? V'afilu al gaboy tzedakah means even those who collect tzedakah. That sounds like this is considered to be an oppressive action. It doesn't sound like you're allowed to force. It doesn't sound like memashkin and alat tzedakah. And the Gemara says, lo kasha, it's not difficult. Had amid, had lo amid. It depends who they're forcing. If they're forcing someone to pay tzedakah who's wealthy, that's okay. If they're forcing someone who's not wealthy, that is not okay. Then the person is considered to be an oppressor. Ki had Rava achvel Rav Nasan barami. It's like Rava, he forced Rav Nasan barami, who was wealthy. V'shakal minei arba me'azuzi l'tzedakah. He took from him 400 zuz for tzedakah. And the Gemara continues. The pasuk says in Sefer Daniel, "V'hamaskilim yazhiru kizoar harakia." It says that the maskilim, the wise ones, they're going to shine like the shine of the rakia. Zedayin shadon din emes la'amito. This pasuk is referring to a judge who issues a true judgment. And then the pasuk goes on to say, "Umatzdike haravim kechochavim liolam voed." It says those who bring righteousness to the public, they're like stars forever. Who does that refer to? Elu gaboy tzedakah. That refers to the charity collectors. And the Gemara continues with a slightly different interpretation of the pasuk. B'masnisa tana. In the Brisa it was taught v'hamaskilim yazhiru kizoar harakia. Again, it says that the wise ones, they shine like the shine of the rakia. Zedayin shadon din emes la'amito v'gaboy tzedakah. That refers to a judge who issues a true ruling, and also it refers to gaboy tzedakah. And the Brisa continues, umatzdike haravim kekochavim liolam voed. When the pasuk goes on to say that the matzdike haravim, they're like the stars, who does that refer to? Elu melamde tinokos. That refers to those who teach children. And the Gemara says kegon man, like an example. Who's an example of that? Amar Rav says kegon Rav Shmuel bar Shilas. It's like Rav Shmuel bar Shilas. The Rav Ashkechel Rav Shmuel bar Shilas, the Havakoi begins because Rav found Rav Shmuel bar Shilas. He was standing in a garden. Amar lei. So Rav said to him, Shavakte lehem nusach. Have you abandoned your trust? Meaning, have you abandoned teaching the children? Amar lei said to him, Hatleisar sheninda lo chazili. It's been 13 years. I've never seen the garden. V'hashtanami. And even now, when I'm in the garden, da'atoy alayu, I'm thinking about my students. And the Gemara continues, V'Rabbanan Mayan. What do we have to say about the Rabbanan now that we mentioned the judges and the Gaboy Tzedakah and the teachers of the school children? What about the Rabbanan? Amar Ravina says, we apply to them the following pasuk from Sefer Shoftim, V'Yohavav, those who love him, Ketzeis Hashemesh B'Gvuraso, they're like the sun in its might. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Gaboy Tzedakah inon rashoin lifrosh zeh mizeh. The Gaboy Tzedakah, we said they collect in pairs, they collect with two people, so they should not separate from one another, they have to be visible to one another. Avol poresh zeh l'shar v'zeh l'chanos. Now one can go to the gate of a house and one can go to the store. As long as they can see each other, they're allowed to collect in that fashion. Matzah mos bashuk, if a Gaboy Tzedakah finds money in the marketplace, so that's really his money, but still lo yitnem b'soch kiso, he shouldn't put it in his own wallet. It's going to look like he's putting tzedakah money into his own wallet. Rather, he should put it into the tzedakah purse. And then when he comes home, he'll take it for himself because it really belongs to him. Similarly, let's say a gabbai tzedakah, he's owed a money by his friend, meaning his friend owes him some money. And the friend pays him in the marketplace. Again, that's really his money, but still, he shouldn't put that money into his own wallet. It might look like he's stealing. Rather, he should put it into the tzedakah purse. When he gets home, then he'll take it for himself because it really belongs to him. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabban and the rabbis taught, Gabai tzedakah, when it comes to Gabai tzedakah, she'ein lehem aniyim l'chalik. Let's say they don't have any poor people to distribute, and so then now they need to exchange the copper coins, which have a tendency to rust. They want to exchange those for silver. So portan la'acherim, they should do the exchange with other people. V'yein portan li'atzman, they shouldn't exchange it themselves, meaning they shouldn't give their own silver for the copper because it might look like they're taking more than they should for themselves. And similarly, Gabai Tamchoy, when you're talking about a Gabai who's in charge of the charity platter of the food, She'ein lem aniyim l'chalik, and they don't have any poor people to give the food to, so they have to sell the food. Again, mochen la'acherim vein mochen la'atzman, they should sell it to others, not to themselves. We're afraid that it's going to look like they're giving themselves a discounted rate. Mos shel tzedakah, and finally it says, when you have money of tzedakah, ein monin osan shtayim. Shnayim, you don't count it 2 coins at a time. El achas achas, you count it 1 at a time, so that there is no mistake in terms of the tally. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, May Reish lo have a Yosef Mar at Tzipe de Beit Kanishta. Originally the master, that refers to Rabba would not sit on the mats in the Beis HaKnesses, and the reason was because they were bought using money from the tzedakah. But Kevan Deshama Lahadatanya, once he heard what it said in the Braiso, L'shanosa L'chol Masha Yirtzu, that they're allowed to change and use the money for whatever they want. They don't have to use it specifically for tzedakah if they determine there's a different need. So have a Yosef, so then he sat on those mats. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, Meireish have a Ovid Mar Trei Kisi. Originally the master would have 2 separate wallets, 2 separate purses. Chad Laniya de Alma, one was to give to the poor of the world, meaning outside the city. V'chad Laniya Damas, and the other one was to give to the poor of the city. Kevan Deshama Lahadamar Le Shmuel Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi. Once he heard what Shmuel said to Rav Tachlifa bar Avdimi, he told him as follows, Ovid Chad Kisa, you should just have 1 purse, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amud Aleph.